Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Akibatun lil mustaqim wala burana ala ila dalimin. Wa salatu salam ala rasulina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh lil ikhwani ikhwati fi din. Wassalamu ala mani tabahuda lil ikhwani ikhwati fi Afrika, Europa, America, Caribbean, wa kulli makan. Anzurama to my phobic community and halim wa salim bikum. Welcome, my dear brothers and sisters, wherever you may be. And I will be continuing here on the Andalus saga for part 3. And, side notes here. I've been trying to, I get quite a few feedback, and a lot of it now has become very negative. Let me see who's here. Okay. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Lil Okti Karima. And, I got quite a few feedback. And of course, I've been getting nothing but provocateurs, provoking, trying to get me to say things, or they're just criticizing. They have nothing to say except to criticize. They can't talk about anything else. And so this is part of the genre of the enemy. And all of us should be mindful of that, and we should never allow for them to stop us from a worthy goal. And our history is worthy. They do not want us to talk about it. This is why, again, brothers and sisters, this has struck a nerve. I was talking to one good brother. He's been writing me back and forth, talking about all the debate about the word more and about and whatnot. We have Moroccans, Arabs, we have a whole slew of people, Tuba, talking about this word and what it means, what it doesn't mean. And I don't want to get into debates with these people about that. I did this before. You just can't get past them. You can give them evidence. They just cannot see it. Okay, bottom line, they just cannot. So I try not to argue about that. So, Assalamu alaikum, Mr. K. How you doing? Thank you for showing up. Thanks for getting back to me about the DNA company. Good. Okay, my dear brother. Yes, I'm hoping that you get some good findings there and whatnot. And if you need some navigation on how to figure out some of, especially the oracle, there's 2 branches of this oracle. This is where will lead you to the composition of your DNA. In-depth DNA and whatnot, give you good percentages, and it'll tell you the ethnic groups that you belong to. And it'll give you the percentages, and it'll give you how far back, which is very good. So inshallah ta'ala, we hope that you get this done and you can find out. And so with that side note, I just wanted to say, brothers and sisters, anytime you have questions, no problem, give me questions. Even if you have negative feedback, just back up your play. Don't just like the Tubop does. He makes a little comment here and there. You're stupid, you're this, that, and so forth and so on. I ignore that. That's why I remove it out, because we don't need that. We don't need to have that. We don't need to have this type of banter and whatnot. So, okay, my brothers and sisters, we'll start here now. Now, you remember the last time we were talking about some of the situations that was going on and what happened. And we talked about how our ancestral brothers, how we were deeply involved, how Morabitoon became decidedly black. And so when we, I'm hoping, I'm hoping I don't see anything erased this time, like last time. Now, here I show you a map. Remember last week, a couple of days ago, not last week, a couple of days ago, I talked about how in the black there, you see the black like line there. That's where Rar is in central part of modern day Mauritania, right? So you see them going down to this area here where it says Senegal, where we're talking is Takur. So what ended up happening is in time, again, they go back up to Adrar, okay, and they begin to take everything centralized in the black there. They finally took it by the sword, by jihad. So Morabitoon incorporated all of these areas and all the people involved in it and whatnot. And this is why they had a massive army. And then, as you see, they went up to where it says Western Sahara, Morocco in English, Maghreb is we call this. And so this is where they start to make their march. And we call the area Maghreb, we call this here, let me see, we get it. I know this is in Arabic, but this is all of Morocco as we understand it in the olden times. There was no such thing as Algeria, Libya, the nation of Tunisia and so forth and so on, Mauritania. It was no such thing as that. It was called Maghreb Aqsa. This is what it was called. And this incorporated all of this. And if you look at this, how it was, the Morabitoon took all of this. The boundaries of Maghreb, it goes to the border of Egypt. So you look down in Mauritania, across some portions of Mali, and up across through a little bit of Chad and across. And this is what we call a Maghreb Aqsa. Because remember, there was no such thing as any of these countries until the Tubab, of course, colonized us. And then they had their meeting in 1883, I believe it was, to dissect Africa up like a cake for themselves and whatnot and so on. So I got you to that point. Now we're in Al Maghreb, and the Morabitoon, our brothers again. For those who first time showing up, Morabitoon again was Amazigh. Okay, and I got into about what happened to the Amazigh, where they came from. I showed you maps about what happened and whatnot. How do we get all of these ethnic groups and whatnot? We talked about also the Amazigh people were called Berber, which is a derogatory, is equivalent to being called the N-word if you're black. And so we do not call, part of my ancestry, we do not call them Berbers because it's wrong. This is what the Europeans coined us, and this is wrong, okay? We coined ourselves Amazigh. But before they became Amazigh, they were Mozab, and I explained how they came from Egypt and how there was a deep connection between the Mozab and the Fulani people, very deep, as you know. And we have been living together. We have been mixing, going across the Sahara for centuries upon centuries, brothers and sisters. I mean, this is our cultures are so similar, as you know, as you saw some of my pictures I was giving in some of the programs, where you can't tell the difference between who is Amazigh and actually who is Fulani, because they look almost the same. So I went through that to explain that. So now we understand. We understand how Morabitoon came about. I explained how it started and how we got into the Takur area, where it's Hapapular, our brothers, the Fulani brothers, and the Sinike brothers. We know we have Wolof over there, and we also know we have Mandinka. We know this. And so they came and joined in on this jihad, and Morabitoon came to air for protection. And then our king in this region, you heard me talk about him many times. Here in the left here, bin Raid, he was king. They called king of Sudan because he had conquered a great portion of Sudan, and even in some parts of the Empire of Mali, along with the help of Morabitoon. And of course, this is not all the way correct. We know this because the gentleman playing here is a famous Arab actor out of Lebanon or Jordan. I can't recall which one it is, but he had the honor of playing, our ancestral brother Yusuf bin Josephine. So now you see that, and so I'm kind of bringing you up to speed in this regard. And so now we got this picture, and so we are now in position to get the understanding that the Morabitoon now has taken the banner of Al-Maghrib as we know it today, and they have not conquered Al-Maghrib. Now, here we go with Andalusia. Andalusia is a complex situation that arose. We went in, of course, as you know, and if you watched my previous programs before, you know what happened, how we got into Andalus. The first arrival of the Black Brothers, Muslims, was in 711. And you know about that story. If you looked at my program, if you didn't, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's very lengthy. But they entered into Andalus and they conquered it, and they took it over, and they were running it for almost about 100 years. If you remember when I talked about this situation, and let me see here. Yeah, this is what by 729 they had. This is how much they had took. You see, deep into the western part of Europe, they had actually conquered. So this is under the banner again of the Muslims, and our Fulani brothers and Amazigh brothers. They had controlled this amount of land. This is modern day Spain as we know it, but this is how it was in 711 to 729. Our brothers had conquered that much of the land. So you could see they did some serious fighting, and they controlled a vast portion of southern Europe, going all the way up, as you see in orange there. This was a very, you can imagine a bloody takeover, but they were compelled to do it because as you understand us in Islam, when there's injustices, we have a right to fight for it. And in this case, you got to remember something: the injustice wasn't done against the Muslims. The justice was actually done against Christians and Jews that Roderick was doing to them. And then finally, the Muslims had surveyed the situation and they intervened in it. And so I gave you that situation when I talked about that in a previous video. So Andalusia was now under control. Now, this is the thing. In the 700s or so, our brothers were controlling it, okay? No doubt. They were controlling this. And they then relinquished their control of Andalus to the Caliphate, okay? The Abbasid Caliphate was running it, and they sent their people over into Al-Andalus to take control. And to be honest with you, brothers and sisters, if you start doing research, their control, their rule was very brutal and discriminatory. The Amazigh and the Fulani brothers began to rebel, but under the leadership of the Fula and the Amazigh, when they were running it, it was no debauchery that would be commonplace in Andalus. Is none. Okay, debauchery became fluid after the Arabs began to rule Andalusia. Now you'll say, well, look, this is, hey man, this is, now we have something on them. Well, when we took it over, by the time in the 1100s to the 1400s, Black folks were also involved in the greatest debauchery in the history at the time of Andalus. So they were also involved. It got to the point that, of course, debauchery knows no color. When they see money in it and people begin weak, then, they begin to import women. And then, of course, what happens from that point like this. And this was no common, this is a same situation happened in Andalus because they became very corrupted, very, very corrupted and so forth. But this is the first start of this corruption and whatnot. And the Arab leadership was very brutal. And the taxation was too much. And so there were some skirmishes that happened between the Amazigh and the Fulani. Our people were there. They began to fight the leadership, and they had brutal skirmishes here and there. Okay, many of the Fula, the Senike, and descendants now, who were there, began to go back into Al Maghrib. Some stayed there, and when they stayed there, they were not, you know, they weren't accepted very much, and they lived on the outskirts of town, which I'll talk about. But under that leadership, all of a sudden, because the Arabs who came over there were already wealthy, and they saw the opportunity, and they got weak in Islam. Yes, they ran Sharia law, but they got very weak, and whoredom was a commonplace. Those cities were so rich, they were so wealthy. They had, castles and so forth and so on, okay? Very rich. And whoredom was a commonplace. And if you understand what was going on inside these castles, this is where you see those stories about the harems and stuff, the Arab harems, where you have 800 women, 700 women, and they're dancing and sleeping with the aristocrats and all that. This was they were doing at this time, and this was going on in the 1800s and to the 1000s. But our brothers will come in and clean this up. I'll get into that in another episode. But they will come eventually to clean this up and clean it out, and also take on the Tuba and kick their butts again. But that's another story. I'll give this to you later on. When the rulers and Christcrafts visited each other, the dancing girls, brothers and sisters, now you remember, if you looked at my class previously, we were talking about the Melungeon women. The Melungeon women were very beautiful because they were a mixture of Fulani and Sinike, and Amazigh, and then mixed with what white mothers, Spanish mother, right? So we knew them in the United States as mulattoes. And so these women were all over the place now, because you're talking about 100 years. So you have 2 generations about there. And so these women were all kind of complexions, many of very beautiful, beautiful bodies and whatnot and so forth. So the Arabs took these women in to these castles and basically had them as harems, and they were, many of these ladies were they were sex workers. They're not slaves, but in a way they were, because they couldn't leave, and they lived in the castle and whatnot and so on. And so this is a big problem like this here. This is a remnant of what I was talking about. You have all kind of girls, these what you call the Melungeon girls, who were working inside the castles. You see them half naked. There's a lot of stories about them, about how they were operating inside the castle. And there was a lot of other very sexually charged situations, talking about how the rulers of all of Andalus, how they had these are the Melungeon women we were talking about. The daddy was Fulani. The mothers were the Spanish. Mothers they were mixed Amazigh with Fulani and in Spanish. And so you had a very mixture of these girls from dark brown skin to very light skin, and the Arab rulers liked these women, and they had them for dancers. So you can imagine, about that situation like this, because you know how men are. Men are weak when it gets to women. You know what Islam, what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has said. You know what our Prophet said about the trials and tribulations of women. Well, these are Arab brothers who were running from this time, from the early 800s to the 1000s. They had a slew of these ladies and whatnot coming in to work in the castles and everything. And they drank wine, and drunkenness was a commonplace. This was Andalus. I'm giving you this backdrop because I want you to understand what was going on in Andalus, because you'll see movies, especially the Europeans and Americans will make movies, and it'll show them in fine raiment garments, but they won't show you about the whoredom, and they won't talk about just what I was showing you right there. They won't talk about this kind of stuff like this. Here, the aristocrats are sitting here now having, when they have meetings among themselves, or aristocrats visit one another, they'll again have our ancient sisters here going dancing. And remember some of the famous Arabian type dancing? This is where all this stuff came from. And they dance to a special type of music, which is unique, the Andalusian music. and how they developed this. And so these girls would dance, drinking drinking wine was so prevalent, and although the sexual misconduct was also very prevalent at this time in the 800s to the 1000s in Andalus. And so you can imagine how our straight fundamentalist brothers who were sitting in Morocco, the Morabitoon, who are now, remember our king, Raib bin Raib, you had Yusuf Josephine, you had Abu Bakr ibn Omar, al-Lamtuni. So you have all of these fundamentalist brothers, okay, running the Morabitoon. Now they have controlled al-Maghrib. They were getting reports about what was going on there in the 1000s at that time, about what was going on in Andalus. They had a lot of reports, and they was sick in their stomach, but they could do nothing at this time because they weren't asked to do anything, and they had to quell their own, because they had Amazigh, you had Insus, there was always disturbances, so they had no other choice. And so they were gathering, and they were, again, making their nation, which we call Dola Morabitoon, as you see in Arabic, in the red here, Dola Morabitoon, Murabitin, and this is, they were controlling this, and the dark blue there is Andalusia, which they will in time take this over. Let me see, we got another. Oh yeah, how you doing, my brother Sudani? Hi, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran jazilan, my dear brother. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for showing up. And so now you got a backdrop, brothers and sisters, on how it was, okay? How it was going and what was happening, and all of the debauchery that was going on in Andalus and whatnot. And so now we had this problem, and Andalus was being run. They were gaining riches upon riches. Okay, we know that. If you look at the index, the Muslim empires at this time were very, 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 very wealthy in Africa, as well as in Western Europe, in Spain and Andalus. We know this and whatnot. But they were noted for this type of thing. They were masters. The Afro-Arab leadership they had mastered the parties, and then drunkenness and all this other stuff you could do. And they had the most beautiful women inside in their harems. They had all of this type of stuff. And some of the stuff that is coming out now about what they were doing and how their fetishes became, some of this extremely sexually charged. Because you think about it, you have access to 100 beautiful Melungeon women, okay, ranging from colors from very light-skinned to very dark-skinned. Because if you heard my class talking about Melungeon women, they had the most beautiful girls working in the castle. You can imagine, you know how men are about women, especially powerful men like this. They became weak, drink wine, look at women all the time and whatnot. This is what was happening. But while in Europe, okay, in the top, the Visigoths was watching. The French, who they called the Franks at the time, was watching. They were watching the Islamic Empire. They were watching it, brothers and sisters, okay? And they were looking at it, and they were seeing what was going on. And they were trying to figure out what they were going to do, because they see all of this and they figured this is a time to start to strike. As the Andalusian powers begin to weaken, the leaders who broke up now to fiefdoms, okay, the fiefdoms inside Andalus saw the threat coming from the north. And because they could not get together, they didn't know what they were going to do. And it got kind of bad. After the breakup of the Caliphate, Andalusia broke up into small fiefdoms and taifas, as we understand in Arabic, each named as king with full autonomy. He had a certain amount of area and didn't have to answer to another king. So they were kings within a kingdom. And again, the Visigoths and the Franks saw this, and it was on, brothers and sisters. By the late 900s, the Visigoth rulers began their push to retake Andalus, to the point that the Muslim leadership, they were so weak, they began to, they didn't know how to fight this new, they know they were going to be invaded. They didn't know how to fight it. So they began to do the ultimate, paying tribute to the Visigoths, which is haram in Islam, in the form basically of kufr, disbelief, and probably even apostasy in Islam may be included in that. They begin to pay tribute to the Visigoths in order to stay in power. Don't we see that today? Huh? Don't we see the same things today? Our leaders are doing what? They're getting subsidies and all this type of thing and being ruled by the disbelievers, right? And in order to stay in power, this is what they were doing. They did this way back from the 700s to the 1000s. The same thing we see today, they were doing back then. They wanted to stay in power, so they would kill, they would do anything to stay in power. They gave their riches to the enemy in order to stay in power. We see that today. The same thing. The Visigoths became very wealthy because you think about this. Andalus is massive. You had all of these fiefdoms. All of them were paying tribute to the Visigoths. The Visigoths became very wealthy off our wealth, the Muslim wealth. The Afro-Arabs, again, was controlling this, but there was revolts that was happening every 25 years or so because of taxation, and there was a discriminatory attitude the Arabs had against the Fulani and the Amazigh. And again, I said they lived on the outskirts. The debauchery became even more acute, where they had these bathhouses, like you see, I think United States, I can't remember, United States, they have bathhouses. In these bathhouses, you have women who would come in, and there were nothing but whorehouses, essentially, but sophisticated. And you could go and take a communal bath, and you could have the woman with you inside this bath, and so on and so on. All this stuff was going on. And of course, brothers and sisters, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is not happy. And he began to weaken this caliphate, the sultanate began to weaken it, and he allowed the devil to run it. And in Maghreb now, we fast forward to the 1000s. Our brothers in Maghreb begin to make their push. As words start to reach even the Visigoths about our group, Morabitoon. The Andalus fiefdoms heard about Morabitoon in Maghreb. And now the word came out, they have united all of Maghreb Aqsa. I showed you a map earlier. All that was under their control. They were powerful, and they had the armies vary between 10,000 to 30,000. There's a lot of reports. We don't know which is which. But you got to remember something in Morabitoon, brothers and sisters. Approximately between 70 to 80% were Black people. As we know, they could walk down the streets of LA, walk down the streets of Mobile, Alabama, or Dallas, Texas, and we would regard them as Black man or African American or Africans. We know that they are that. 78% was that, at least that. Others were light brown skin, as you saw in the other pictures of some of our Amazigh brothers, but they're still Black folk. So Morabitoon essentially was a Black sultanate that arose in Maghreb. No doubt about that. And you remember we talked about the ruler of Morabitoon. Okay, I don't see him in this one. Where do you have him? Yeah. This was how he was described. This is the depiction of him. He was now the Sultan, the ruler, as we know, as Amir Muslimin, and he was now controlling a vast territory of Maghreb Aqsa. So he was in control now. The Visigoths became concerned. The weak leaders in Andalusia became concerned about this man, our ancestral brother Yusuf bin Tajassafin. They became very concerned about him because his power was growing, and they knew this. So now this, I already talked about this here. I talked about this yesterday. Other day, about there was a disagreement, not disagreement, but they had a debate on which way the Morabitoon was going to go. If they were going to go north to the south. I explained that to you. Our famous ruler from Tukror, Ray bin Ray, along with thousands of Sudanese Mujahideen, all of them went up. Now they're in Al-Maghrib. This is why, again, brothers and sisters, we still have a large Black African population here in Al-Maghrib. The city right next to us called Meknes. You know, many of the sultanates put these soldiers for reward, you know, gave them areas, land, and everything. A lot of it was outside of Fez, especially in Meknes region, and in some portions of Fez and other parts. That's why you go to some cities in Maghreb, you have a large Black population, Black African population. But many of them are more in my complexion. You have some that are darker, but most of them are like myself, because they have now mixed with Amazigh, and they have mixed because you remember the Europeans came in, and so it's a melting pot again. They mixed with Lungeons and so forth and so on. See, so you have a melting pot that's happened. So all of this was now inside the empire. They had conquered Maghreb Aqsa. It was now under their control. Back to Andalus. This is an area where we always, because this is a hot topic, as we know what's going on with the Jews in Israel. We know about this going on there. Okay, they were up to mischief even in Andalus. We went to battle for them. Can you believe this in 7/11? Rightfully so, because they were being persecuted, along with Orthodox Christians were being persecuted in Andalus. And the emir who was sitting in Tunis gave the authorization to our brother to come in and to take on the Visigoths, and which we did. We won, and we relieved them, the Jews and the Christians, from all this persecution. Okay, because they were Orthodox Christians. We're not talking about the modern Christians, you know, or secular Christians, whatever you want to call it. That's what the government was. But they had Christians who were Orthodox, who took their Christianity from the Arian group, is what they call them. And I won't get into that so long here. I talked about them in one class a long time ago, but those were very Orthodox Christians and so forth and so on. And they had books that, of course, the Bible has excluded, the modern day Bible has excluded from that, but that's another story altogether. So the Jewish aristocrats played an important role in Andalus, brothers and sisters. They began to play both sides. They played with the Muslims, and then they were also reporting to the Visigoths. And the Jewish aristocrats began to make, relationships with the Muslims, with the Andalusian aristocrats and their sons, and they would bring women, drink, and everything, and their sons would go to these lavish Jewish aristocrat parties, and they get poisoned. So they've been killing them. They start to kill them. And the word came out that some were seen with some of the Visigoth rulers. I mean, with their jaish and so forth and so on. So it started to come out now about their treachery. They begin to be the eyes and ears for Roderick I mean, excuse me, now in the 1000s for for Alfonso. And so this, not only were the Jews doing that, other rulers are doing this too. In order to take over another fiefdom, they would poison their brother. They bring him and have a lavish party, bring naked women for them to dance in front of them, bring them into the bed chambers, and they go sleep with him, and then they'll give him wine, and the wine is poisoned, and he would die. This is all prevalent at the time in Andalus. That's how sick it was, brothers and sisters. It was very sick. Very, very sick. And another side point, I was talking to my wife about this, and I talked to some other people about the same thing. You notice we talking about DNA now. Here in Al-Maghrib, the fallacy is that everybody's descended from the Arabs. It's not true. We're Amazigh, okay? Amazigh. And that goes to show you that the Arabs who came didn't mix with us much, because very few of us have this DNA in our system. And those in Andalus, the same thing. The Afro-Arabs only married among themselves. Yes, they had women who were Melungeon and Amazigh and mixed, okay? Amazigh with Fulani mixed. Our Fulani women weren't there, but the descendants of the Spanish woman and the Fulani man, right, the Melungeon, yes, they had daughters and so forth. And you remember, I showed you pictures of depictions of some of these sisters. They were, some of them stunningly beautiful. They had this mixture. And then when they begin to mix with the Amazigh, and then they start to mix among themselves, they start producing hybrid type of girls, dark, tall, some kind of heavy, beautiful hair, skin, and so forth. And the Afro-Arabs were crazy about these ladies. They were crazy about them. They had them in their castles, as you heard me talk about. Now we get to the parts that's going to lead to something. Alfonso was gathering all this wealth from the Muslims. And he began to raise the taxes again. And the rulers didn't like it of Andalus. And so one of the most famous of the kings at this time was King Mu'tamid bin Abbad. And you might have heard there's a lot of movies about him and a lot of discussion about him. We'll talk more in depth about him. He'll play an important role, and he is famous in Spain. He's famous here in Al-Maghrib as well. And he began to detest what was going on. But, brothers and sisters, he had some in his shura council who were Amazigh. He sent them to check out Morabitoon. When the last visit and last minister came back, he told now how powerful this Mujahideen group, Morabitoon, was, how much area they have, and they were fundamentalists. So he was kind of thinking in his back mind that he can lure them into Andalus for a battle with the Visigoths, because this was not a thing of Islam for the kings for Andalus. It was a thing of money and power, and they would use anyone and anybody to stay in power. Morabitoon to them was that. There was just another tool for them to stay in power, to keep up their fiefdoms and all their filth and so forth that they were doing, and riches, because they were rich beyond belief. That's why Alfonso was taking their taxes. Instead of trying to fight them, he was trying to destroy them by taking their wealth. And they were paying lots of money, but in gold and other things. See? So Alfonso could now gain his army, which he did. He had a sizable army, and he had mercenaries, especially from France, as we knew them then as Franks. They were involved with Alfonso, because now he had money now, because he was getting all these riches from all the fiefdoms inside Andalus. See, so now he sends a first messenger, his first minister and a judge, to ask Yusuf to Josephine, the Sultan, the Amir Muslimin, for assistance. And now we start to have brothers coming from other fiefdoms into Andalus as well. I'm trying to figure here where we got the pictures here. No. We got, okay, brothers and sisters, bear with me here, please. Okay. Other fiefdoms were sending in their ulama. The ulama, I mean, they weren't sending them. They were coming on their own. They were tired of the debauchery. They feared that the Visigoths was going to come into Andalus and run it. And so now the ulama and the fuqaha, they start to come to visit with Morabitoon. And then we have these encounters. He comes in here, and now you can imagine, I showed you some remnants of what was going on in Andalus. Gold-plated cups, gold-laden walls with murals, and wealth beyond wealth. Our brothers was living in Casbas. Remember, I showed you the pictures the other day. They were living modestly. They were dressing modestly. They were fundamentalists, as we understand, in Islam. They took Islam fundamentally. They were running the Sharia. Here on the right is one of the no, he's not Qadi, he's a faqih, and one of the fiefdoms who was tired. He had went to the king and told him about his ways, and he said, we have a problem here. You're giving all our wealth to the disbelievers, which is haram in Islam, as part of kufr on top of that. And he said, they're going to come in and take over this kingdom. You need to do something. They didn't care. They were drinking themselves to death. They were whoring themselves to death. They were giving their wealth because they had so much to give. They didn't care. So the fuqaha and the ulama began to go into Al-Maghrib to talk to Yusuf to Josephine, Amir Muslimin, in Al-Maghrib. So they begin to arrive in unison to pray, to come to talk to him about the situation. Here he's talking in depth the seriousness of the situation that was going on. He was begging him to come. He's talking about Yusuf on your left here. He was talking, Yusuf bin Josephine, Rahim Allah, begging him to come in Andalus to clean up Al-Andalus and to protect them from the Visigoths. See, so now we have this, but our brother here, Yusuf, to Josephine, told him he can't do anything right now because he was fearing, and his assured counsel was also saying the same thing. They're all divided. He said, okay, we go over there, but who's going to come to fight with us? And so he told him, I need something, a fatwa, a religious ruling from the ulama fuqaha there in Andalus before I would come. The faqih, out of emergency, was very afraid. He was not happy. He had to go back. He was not happy, but he understood what Yusuf bin Josephine was saying. The Amir Muslimin was saying he wants a fatwa. You give me a fatwa from all of the ulama that they all concur, I will come. Now, again, in this discussion, there's a lot of banter going back and forth. He was talking about what they had to do and what they were going to do and what they needed to do and whatnot. And in sitting into why you're not going to come, we need you, you can't let us down, and so forth and so on. But they had no other choice because it's true. Our brother Yusuf bin Josephine was correct. He had his own stuff going on at Al-Maghrib, but he said, look, we could come, but we need the unison body of Andalus together because they didn't want to go there to go fight their brothers in time they will have to and fight the Visigoths. So again, he used a term, he wanted an Amr al-Din, This is what he said, Arabic language, meaning I want a fatwa, and then I will come in there. This is how they operated. I wish our rulers operated the same as they did then. The king of Seville, who Mortimed bin Abad. This is him, portrayal of him and one of his generals. And you see their clothing, they were very, very rich and whatnot. And you saw the difference between the kings there in Andalus and how our brothers dressed in Al-Maghrib. Very different. Did you see that? Very, very different. See? And so that's one of the things that, they have all of this wealth. The Morabitoon was not wealthy at that time, but they were starting to get wealthy, but they were doing it by means that was halal, not haram, with whoredom and so forth and so on. See? So now I have to get into something, brothers and sisters, because I cannot talk about the Morabitoon without this sister that you see here just addressing the brothers. I have to get into this beautiful ancestral sister. Her name was Zainab. She would play an integral part in the Morabitoons in its success when it moved into Al-Maghrib. Here she left. Her husband sent her forward because at the time Morabitoon was making her push inside Al-Maghrib. And her husband told her to go, and I think he was killed in the battle. I'm not sure. And Morabitoon now was almost masters at this time of all of Al-Maghrib. She came off her camel to address the ulama of the Morabitoon and the leadership. And you can imagine this, brothers and sisters, if you look at the way they are dressed. This is how it was, and this is how it still is here in Al-Maghrib. Those who wear the clothes that are germane to our country here in Al-Maghrib. You see over to the left here, you see a brother with white here. This is what I was talking about, the serham. I have a serham here. They're outer garments that protect outer garments, but they also keep you very warm in the winter months, because in the desert, I told you before, it gets cold. And as you know, again, as the Arabs called us the veiled ones, you understand why. Because of the clothing and so forth and so on. Here you have the leadership that's standing in front. They've been addressed by this beautiful ancestral sister named Zainab. She addressed them talking about the Quran, and she's also talking about other issues and stuff like this. Brilliant sister. She played a major role in the development of the Morabitoon, especially at the early stages, because she gave a lot of advice, because she would end up marrying Abu Bakr ibn Omar Lamtuni. Okay, she married him, and then eventually she would be married to Yusuf bin Jasfin, the Amir Muslimin, in time. And she gave a lot of advice, a lot. She was a very wealthy woman. She was a very kind woman, but she was very brilliant. Okay, very brilliant. She's a stateswoman. She knew the Quran very well, and she was also as educated as she was and how smart she was just that beautiful as well. She was very, 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 very a very, very astute Muslim woman. Very, very astute Muslim woman. And I had to talk about her, brothers and sisters, because she played a very valuable part in development of Morabitoon. Okay, so now we get into the areas here. Now the king of one of the fiefdoms who play an important part here, King Mortimed bin Abad. He now officially was seeking the help because he wrote a very nasty letter to Alfonso. Now Alfonso is going to come into Andalus now and begin to try to take it over, because he was not going to pay this tribute. He raised the taxes on everybody. He said, I'm not going to pay it. He knew waiting in the wings. He was hoping that Morabitoon and Al-Maghrib will come to Andalus to assist him. So he wrote him a very nasty letter and called him basically he called him a despotic ruler and whatnot like this. And this angered Alfonso, who now says, "Uh-oh, okay, now it's on. It's time me to go in there and remove the Muslims once and all from Spain as we know today, remove them once and for all." And so now he sent his emissaries to go to plead with our brother, the Amir Muslimin, Yusuf bin Josephine. So fast forward, Morabitoon received the fatwas, and they started to, what can I say, build their plan, and to get their plan orchestrated, and to have, boy, I don't see these. Okay, the ulama of Morabitoon were debating the issue how they were going to go into Andalus, and it was decided they would use ships to bring them to Ceuta, and if you look at a map, into Andalus. But before that, the brothers had to make a decision. Here they're sitting at the sea, right across to Spain. There's Ceuta, and then right across to Spain, because if you know, Spain is very close to the north coast of Morocco. Very, 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 very close. Not too far away. So he can look across there, and we knew that Spain was there. They're deciding how they were going to attack. How they were going to enter Andalus. So now the decision has been made that they were going to do it. They had the fatwa they needed. The fatwa there in Maghreb was given to our brother, and also there was a fatwa issued there by some of the ulama there in Andalus. So now he had what we call the Amr al-Azim, means the great command, which great command meaning this way, coming from the proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah of alayhi salatu salam. Okay, so he had that now, armed with that. And as I say, I wish our leaders today would do the same thing. Utilize our ulama and fuqaha, so that way they can rule correctly, because they'd be using subhanahu wa ta'ala's governance to rule. And so here they're deciding now what they're going to do. And they have now made a decision. They got the fatwa. Now they're going to enter and go to Andalus to fight the Visigoths. And so this is a big development now, and we're talking about around about 1080 or something around in there. And it's been decided, and they're going to come into Andalus, and then the fight is going to be on. And with all of the stuff that the banditry was going on, you had some of the rulers in Andalus did not want to Morabitoon there because they were afraid, and eventually their fears would come true, because they felt in time they would get removed. And so they felt that something in back of their heart that they were going to lose out. Oh, here we go again, brothers and sisters. I'm sorry. Here we go. They took me out. Let me get. Okay. And yeah, okay, we got. Oh yeah. How you doing, my dear brother? How you doing? Thank you for showing up. Salam alaikum. Walaikum salam. Thank you, my dear brother. Thank you very much for showing up. And so now, brothers and sisters, we have the situation. We have Andalus, and Andalus is ready to go to war with the disbelievers. We know as the ancient Spaniards as the Visigoths. The Visigoths were joined by the Franks. The Franks are who? The French, as we understand it today, but they called Franks at that time. And so now they're at the point where they're going to fight. So now our esteemed leader meets with one of the great the combatants of Andalus, and they get ready to meet. And here they're talking, as you saw the picture here, they're meeting here. Now he's given him his pledge that he will fight in defense of the Muslims there in Andalus. To your left, and in the center there, is our famous General Ray bin Ray. As again, remember the Sudani. Now there's reports that the Sudani forces alone with the group, because we have different versions of how many people were there. But they suggested that between 4,000 to 8,000 of the troops, possibly out of the 10,000 to 12,000 that showed up, or 15,000, were from the Tukror region, the Sudani. And they will play an important part. I will get into that at another segment. But now we're at this point. Now they have met. You have Yusuf Josephine, which is, we know this is incorrect. We know him was a black man. I showed you his picture. He's now meeting with the one of the kings of Andalus. Okay, so they're now talking, greeting as brothers should do in Islam. And our king here, Ray bin Ray, he's looking at them and whatnot and so on. He will play an important role on the upcoming battle, and I'll get into that at another segment. And now we have we have them meeting now, and here they come now. They embrace. They're here and here in all white here with his sirham. The white, all the white is the sirham garment, which is an overgarment again that we wear here in Al-Maghrib. They've been wearing that for centuries upon centuries, and this is here is one of the great leaders of Morabitoon at the time, and his name is Sir Ibn Abu Bakr, and he's looking over this. And here's the wazir to your left here, that's in the red or orange from under Mortimer, and so now they hug, and now their discussion, and this is what we're at this point now. He's there in Andalus now. He's there in Andalus. Now we look at Andalus, and we look at they call it Caliph. I don't like to use that term, so it's not correct, but this is now where they're talking about. And you see in the red here, Cordoba, they have met there. They went here to meet there in Cordoba, and this is where they're at, discussing the battle against the Visigoths that you see up to the north here, and of course the Franks. We know the French was also involved in this. So and all the other small kingdoms under the king of Alfonso, all in there under him now, they're all getting together to go fight against the Muslims and to try to rid the peninsula of the Muslims once and for all. They just say, hey, this is it now. It's time to do something. And our brother sent the first salvo to Alfonso. I don't know how to put the document here. I don't know how many can read Arabic, but he sent a letter to Alfonso. And every time I read this letter, it makes me laugh, because he told him that what he worshiped is misguidance. And then he gave him demand that the Islamic demand, if you understand the Sharia Allah, you give your enemy, before you fight him, you engage him, you negotiate with him to bring him out of his nakedness, so to speak, out of his darkness, to bring him to Islam, to Sharia Allah, and the Sunnah of our Prophet, ﷺ. So he came to him, and he sent him the letter, and he demanded to him that, one, he comes to Islam. He comes to Islam, then it's a brotherhood. We have the brotherhood between us. Second, if he didn't want to do that, you pay a tax to the Muslims. He rejected that as well. Third, he said, if you don't want the first two, it's the safe. The safe means the sword. Then we will fight. And Alfonso said, yes, we're going to fight. I will not agree to the first two conditions. So now they're going to fight. So brothers and sisters, this is where we're going to stop here at this point, because the battle and what's preceding to the battle is something. There's some things happening here that a lot of don't want to talk about, because they don't want to show some things about Islam that is very disturbing to the disbelievers. But I will give you some things that happen that show you the power and strength of the Islamic religion. But not only that, when subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses our learned men, what happens? There's some incidents that happen that is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And all this came directly from subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it can't come from anywhere else. No, not from me or any other man or no animal. See? And I'll give you that in another segment. So now we're at the point, brothers and sisters, we're at Andalus. And the Visigoths are ready now to enter into a battle with the Muslims in Andalus. And they decide now it's time that they're going to fight. The Muslims were in Andalus were frightened because they were going to lose their power. Now the Morabitoon is now in Andalus. And so now the discussion between all of the leaders of Andalus, along with the Amir Muslimin, Yusuf bin Josephine, are now being conducted. And how they're going to do the battle, who's going to participate, and so forth and so on, which I'll get deeper into in another section. So I'm getting ready to close at this point. I'm hoping, brothers and sisters, I didn't bore you a lot with this. We got another comment here. Yes, brother. Yes. Thank you very much, my dear brother. Thank you for the encouragement. Thank you very much, my dear brother. And so now we're at this point. Brothers and sisters, history sometimes is very boring. But what makes it so unique about this history here is that this history was taken from us. And we were whitewashed. We had our Fulani brothers now being painted as white, as you saw me earlier talking about this and showing pictures of how our great Amir Muslimin was white. A picture made him look like he's from Norway, when they ignored the depiction of him according to what what they depicted him. This is what was talked about. The Portuguese, Spanish even said this, and they depicted him and drew drawings of him, and this is a depiction of him. He's not Tuba. He was black. Okay, he's a Amazigh, but no doubt probably mixed with Fulani blood, because most Amazigh today, if you know about them, as you heard me talk, most Amazigh today have sub-Saharan African blood. None are pure. You are right. You'll see on chat sites, you see racist Amazigh people who are white now talking about they're 100% or 90%. That's hogwash. I told a story of one. I saw a program here, and I don't know if they removed it or not. There were three young Moroccan, it was two girls and one boy. Young, educated, they could speak English. They've learned English here on Maghreb, and they took their DNA, got money, and took a DNA test. Two of them were shocked when they found out that they had Fulani heritage. The other sister was so upset because she was very light-skinned. She kept talking about all of this European, she was this, so forth and so on. And she found out she had a great-grandfather that came out was Hausa. And she was so upset behind that. And so this is what I'm talking about, brothers and sisters. Don't look at the color of the Moroccan people, because you can't go by that. See, because you look at their DNA, and there's some other indicators which I can't get into right now because it's sexually charged. I won't get into that. It's not the top. It's not the show for that. Not right now. But don't look at them as you see them, because they have that African heritage. If you look at black people when they marry with Moroccan, even the lightest skinned, they never look like mulattoes. You ever notice that? You look at the black man who's married to Moroccan. There's a lot of them in the United States. You don't know that the children look like regular black people. So that tells you about their black African heritage. See, it does. And you know, and we have some of the greatest tools as Muslims. We have the Ashura Council and so forth and so on. When we meet, we're going to discuss especially things of war, like here. He's playing, you know, he's white. We know that. I just showed you a picture, but he's playing Yusuf bin Josephine right now. Here they're discussing about the battle plans, what they're going to do. This is among the Morabitoon right now, because we have a Ashura Council, because everybody has to be in unison on this. If they're going to go into Andalus, they're just discussing it here. So this is a picture of the Ashura Council and everything. Again, you look at the stark difference between the Muslims in at this time in Andalus, who are rich beyond, with beautiful clothing, silk clothing and everything else, gold and everything, gold plated shirts and coats and everything, or gold rings and all kind of other things. Our brothers down in Al-Maghrib, when Morabitoon, were very simple men, very simple, dressed very simply, with their turbans. Of course, as you know, the Afro-Arabs called them what? The veiled ones. See, out of respect for them, because they saw them in their clothing, the way their manner of dress and whatnot, and they called them the veiled ones because they kept their veils on at all time, as a show of sign of respect to others, to keep themselves humbled and so forth and so on. So this is again, brothers and sisters, another episode, and I'll get back to you again on the final chapter of this. I'll get into that, because it's very bloody, and there's some things that's going to happen that is very heart-wrenching. And you know, when you look at this, you can imagine, especially if you look at film of this, it'll almost bring you to tears because of what has happened. And I'll get into that in the next segment. But again, brothers and sisters, I know this may be mundane to a lot of people, but this is your history that they've taken from you. You go to other places and other sites, they'll rarely ever talk about you. They dismiss you as saying you weren't there in Andalus. You had nothing to do with Andalus, especially the racists among our brothers today. They're white, they're black, they're Amazigh, they're Ghanaians, or whoever. I just saw an article written by a scholar who denounced what happened in Andalus. Incredible. He forgot how Roderick was raping the women, see, the Jewish and Christian women. He forgot about that part. But this is what I'm talking about. But this is part of your history, brothers and sisters. You should not shy away from it. You should embrace it. So it may be mundane, but this is your history, and you should learn it and keep it and spread it to your children, so we'll have it. So we'll stop this nonsense. You can imagine 100 years from now, Michael Jordan, the famous, the greatest basketball player, as far as I'm concerned, I've ever saw. Okay? Probably 100 years from now, according to white racists, they may paint him as white. Because this is what they do. When we do something, we have incredible feats. What do? Down the road, they paint the person white. No different than what happened with Andalus. They paint the Moors as white. They paint all the people in Mauritania as white. They painted us from Tukrur area as white. That's wrong. So this is why we have to talk about our history, and we have to be firm about our history, and we have to learn our history, and we should embrace our history and whatnot, and then give it to our children, so that way we can have, we can pass this on and whatnot to our children, because they're not going to show you this. See, here's our brother here from Tukrur, the king, Ray bin Ray. They're not going to show you about him. They'll show him as white. He was a black man. How could be somebody from Senegal, from some mythical white tribe? Impossible. Impossible. It never happened. Our brother here is Amazigh, light brown skin, black man. Okay, you look at his hair is curly. If you look at his hair and everything like this, and Amazigh and the Fulani brothers in particular marry. He would marry a Fulani sister. Ben Rabe's brother would marry a Amazigh sister, because we're almost the same people, have the same customs. And we join in jihad, especially from the 700s. We have been working together until the modern times. Now we're separated. The enemy has separated us. We have the Amazigh over here. We have the Fulani over here. You know what's going on in this side? What's happening now? The Amazigh are fighting the Fulani in many places. Okay, See, so they have managed to separate us. But in those days, they weren't separated. And they went in jihad and formed the Morabitoon, and they went over to rule Al-Maghrib for about 100 years before they were removed out of power. So they're not going to show you this, brothers and sisters. They're not going to depict the people as they are, see, and whatnot, especially even in dress and whatnot. Because today, the Fulani man who's dressing, traditionally, is called a terrorist or bandit, which is wrong. The Amazigh is the same way. In the desert, the Amazigh still dressed like this. You can see over to your left, they still dress in this type of fashion like this. But this type of clothing today is considered to be the clothing of terrorists. We know this is not the case. We're not terrorists, none of us. But this is how the history is, brothers and sisters, and how they didn't want to depict us right. We got Shukran, my Anjarama, my dear brother, John Jarama, my brother. Thank you very much. Yes, brother. Yes, the Pulo. Yes, the Pulo is the Fulani. You call Fulani. And Shukran, Anjarama, my dear brother. Thank you very much for your comment. And we got here, mashallah, brother. Yes, yes, this is very true. Again, my dear brothers and sisters, we should be very proud, and we should try to get updates on our history, because we need that. We need to have updates on our history to make sure that we are placed in world history, because you notice in world annals, we're nothing but slaves. That's all they show us as. And then the kingdoms we had, they showed nakedness. They show us coming out of trees, eating bananas. And we had to wait for the Tubab to come into our countries to show us how to even fix food. This type of stuff is still prevalent in books, especially in Europe and the United States today. And we still have this thought that in Africa, there was only thing that was there in Africa was slavery. And this civilization came to us when the Tubab came and colonized us. Then we became something as human beings again. See, so we have to debunk that. So we need to fight that with knowledge, and not with anger, but fight it with knowledge and give them the proofs and stuff like that. There's a lot of literature out there now proving that we are part of world history. Okay, we had illustrious kingdoms, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. We had that on the continent. So we should be proud of that history, brothers and sisters. We should not shy away from that. And you Fulani brothers in particular. I had a Fulani brother the other day when I was writing to him. He was asking me a lot of questions and whatnot. Then he came back to me and he said something very terrible to me. Now I suspect him. I thought maybe he was Tubab trying to play like he's Fulani. But then after I start seeing things, he's not. He asked me if I was a terrorist because he saw the way I dress. We got to stop that, brothers and sisters. We have to stop that among ourselves. Because if he's a weak Muslim, he can't come and deem me as that, as though I'm a criminal of some sort. Okay, running around. He said he thought I was running around through the Sahel, fighting in jihad. And I told him, I said, now if you saw me, I'm almost 70 years old. Now you tell me how many people are 70 years old are running around through the Sahel fighting and stuff, huh? I mean, if I don't get my 8 hours of sleep now, my age now, I'm not 20 years old. I'm going to have a hard day. So how I'm supposed to go down in the Sahel and fight in jihad? I'm at 70 years old. How? See, this is kind of stuff, nonsense that we African people should stop that. We should stop calling each other names and stuff because you disagree or whatever. If you want to be modern, you be modern. But if you have our Fulani brothers who are traditionalists, who honor our Prophet ﷺ and honor our ancestors the way they took Islam, they're not terrorist brothers and sisters. Make a distinction between the bandits, those who are killing and robbing. Make a distinction between the two. Don't call all of us that. We already have enough Tubab and other of ethnic groups calling all Fulani terrorists. The Fulani brothers and sisters, the House of Brothers and Sisters, we should not be calling one another terrorists because we disagree with one another. We should not. When somebody makes a crime, they make their crime. Not because he's Fulani, he's a criminal, period. If he's Hausa or Fulani, or if he's Tiv or whatever, Kupeli, whatever the ethnic group, it's a crime is a crime. When you steal something, it's not a Fulani crime, right? It's a crime, period, because it's against the Hudud Allah. It's against that. So it's not a Fulani crime. We should stop that. So I wanted to put that in there because the brother, you know, I was very polite with him. I told him, I said, you know, brother, where'd you get that from? How could I be that? You look at me, you saw me. I'm almost 70 years old. How can I be running around through the Sahel? And I live in Maghreb on top of that. And I asked him, did you review the other tapes when I talked about this issue? About how we were supposed to go against this? And I gave the rulings about that. He didn't bother to review that. He just looked at me and said, oh, yeah, you're out in the Sahel, out there in jihad. We need to stop that. We need to be more respectful to one another because we have pulaku as Muslims and as full of people, right? We should not be doing that. If the man's a bandit, he's a criminal. We call him for what he is. But our elders who are giving us the truth and giving us the religion and our history, you don't call them criminals and terrorists. You shouldn't do that. That's against pulaku. You know that. It's against that. We do not treat our elders in that fashion by calling them something because they wear a turban as our ancestors did for all those centuries. Okay? All those centuries, you know what's going on. I told you, and I gave you the proof. They've been wearing this since the 700s, and also with face veils. Don't call us criminals. So I'll leave you with that, my dear brothers. Oh, we got another comment. Thanks. Giving us lives to what? Yeah, you're welcome, my dear brother. Oh, thank you, my dear brother. Yes, thank you very much for that. And brothers and sisters, I'm long here. I got to get ready to go to prayer. I'm just warm. My wife here. We got prayer here. Salat Maghrib. So till the next time, brothers and sisters, stay safe out there. Keep up your prayers. Keep praying to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that we'll have victory, inshallah ta'ala, and whatnot, that he gain us knowledge and whatnot, and give us safety for our families and whatnot. And I'll leave you with that, my brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.